Welcome. We do have seats up front that if you're tired of standing, you're welcome to come up front. So I'll call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting for the Board of Directors for Pasco School District. And we will begin tonight with a flag salute. Flag salute. Looks like we have Livingston Elementary here.
Good evening, President Christensen and Superintendent Whitney and our school board members. I have three lovely ladies here who are going to lead us through our flag salute. We'll start off with the smallest here. We have Savannah. She's a kindergartner in Mrs. Bates' classroom. And then we have Olivia, who's a third grader in Mrs. Larson's room. And Victoria, who's a sixth grader in Mr. Larson's room. And these three were chosen because they exemplify what it means to be a Livingston Leopard. They follow our big three school rules, which are show respect, make good decisions, and solve problems. And so three wonderful role models, and they're all three sisters as well. But great role models, and we're lucky to have them at Livingston, and I'm going to turn it over to them to get us started on our flag salute.
Why don't you guys come right up front here where we can see you. Perfect.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you, ladies. Thanks for coming and leading us in the flag salute. So I think we've got a token here for you of appreciation. And I bet your parents are here too, is that correct? Hi, Mom and Dad. Thanks for sharing your students with us. Thank you, ladies. And thank you, Principal Isha. Thanks for coming. So, at least my computer's still working. You guys can't see it because we got this little thing hiding it. But could we have a roll call? Present.
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 She is excused.
Present.
Yeah. All right, so we're doing a little cleanup here. There's a
Clean up on aisle 5.
yeah. All right, a little soak up, actually. So thank you. I think we're good for now. Okay, so are you ready for the agenda review?
Yes. I would like to call the board's attention to a change in consent agenda item K. The only change to that was the addition of Pasco High School. Both Pasco High School and CHS will be attending the same DECA conference, and so there's a change that Pasco High's information was added to that. In addition, you'll notice that we have stricken our request for an executive session for land acquisition. Randy Nunemaker was unexpectedly called away from the district today, so we will not be having that tonight. We'll schedule that at a later time.
Okay, thank you. There we go. So tonight we have a special recognition. Mr. Shane Ettinger, if you would take it away, please.
A special recognition.
Yes.
Well, good evening, Board President Christensen, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. October is National Principals Month, and tonight we have the honor of recognizing the 52 outstanding men and women who serve as the principals and assistant principals at the 15 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and 4 high schools that are part of the Pasco School District. It's been said that the key to student success is a great school, and the key to a great school is a great principal. Our school principals and assistant principals are expected to be educational visionaries, instructional leaders, and assessment experts. They're also counted on to be disciplinarians, community builders, budget analysts, facility managers, and special programs administrators. They're entrusted with the education and development of our community's young people. They set the academic tone for their schools and work collaboratively with teachers to develop and maintain high curriculum standards. They also work to set performance goals and objectives to help their students achieve educational excellence. Principals are among the hardest working but often the least recognized individuals in education. Principals set the academic tone for their schools, and it is their vision, dedication, and determination that provide the mobilizing force for achieving student success. We do have several principals and assistant principals here with us tonight, and at this time I would ask you to please stand to be recognized. We're fortunate in Pasco to have hardworking principals and assistant principals who are dedicated to ensuring that all of our students can experience success at all of our schools. I would also invite the board to share any comments that they may have at this time.
I just want to thank our principals and assistant principals and recognize that they probably do more work than most districts across our state because we have very large schools. So not only do they do all the things that Mr. Ettinger mentioned, but we're talking about taking care of a lot of students. And so I appreciate that, and I know the families in our district appreciate their efforts to help so many students since we're a rapidly growing community still.
Thank you, principals, for coming tonight. I agree, you guys do a lot of work, and we couldn't do what we do without, or couldn't have the success we have without your work and support as principals. So thank you. I'm guessing we have 2 or 3 times as many principals as we have here tonight. So thank you for coming, and please tell your colleagues thank you for the work that you do on behalf of our students. So we have some treats for you, I believe, in the Columbia room, and we would invite you to go there. You're welcome to come back to the meeting if you want, but we understand that you are busy and this is probably not your top priority. We do appreciate you coming, though, tonight and being recognized. And also, while you're there, there is a little basket that's got some Pride of Pasco pins in it. If you would please take one. We want you to know that we're proud of you and proud of the work you do, and so thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for your many, many hours. We are well aware that you put in more hours than most, and good schools almost always are accompanied by good principals, and we just appreciate all the time, energy, and effort. Thanks so much for coming. We love having you here in October during Principals Night because we want to acknowledge your great work and all you do to keep our kids educated in the best way that they possibly can be.
So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll let you go get a refreshment.
Thank you.
Oh.
That's okay.
I was going to say thanks. We sit up here and talk a lot and set the vision, but you guys are the ones who go out and do it and make it happen. So thank you for setting those positive cultures at each of your buildings.
I would ask the student representatives to please join us in the Columbia room. We want to take the proverbial group photo, so we want to have you as part of that. And as President Christensen mentioned, we do have some small tokens of appreciation for you in there.
Okay. So this is the portion of our meeting where we have audience comments. We welcome you or invite you to come to the podium if you have something to say to the board that you would like to share with us. We do limit you to 2 minutes, so we would ask that you be mindful of that. We do have a timekeeper, Ms. Thornton, will keep track of the time, and at 1 minute and 30 seconds, when you have 30 seconds remaining, she'll hold up the yellow envelope, and at 2 minutes, she'll hold up the red envelope. If you would please finish your thought. And as we have customarily done, please don't yield your time to somebody else. If you have something to say, we'd love to hear from you, but if you do have more than your 2 minutes allows, you can certainly email us and email us as much as you think we would need. So this time, we'll open it up to audience comments.
Good evening. Can you hear me? My name is Ashley Hedrick, and tonight I am petitioning you to, let me just read it, okay, because I'm better at that. PE credits for athletics are common in Washington State, and Pasco is overdue in developing a district-wide policy for our student athletes. We propose that high school and community-based athletics of equivalent rigor, be eligible for waiver. PE waivers are granted for Delta High School students who may waive all PE credits if enrolled for 4 years, even if never taking a PE course, which seems discriminatory when student athletes are not offered the same opportunity. Again, our request is that the high school athletes be eligible for a PE credit waiver as per RCW 28A 230050, stating individual students may be excused from participating in physical education because of participation in directed athletics or military science and tactics, or for other good cause. Other districts have PE credit waivers that are simple to manage, requiring little paperwork and minimal administrative effort. Please allow student athletes more academic flexibility, whether it be to enroll in PE, weights, or additional academic courses to best prepare them for their future professional careers. There is overwhelming community support with 200+ signatures were collected from Pasco residents endorsing a waiver of 0.5 PE credits per completed sport season per year. These signatures were collected from parents and coaches of elementary schools, middle schools, and high school students who recognize that athletics can be just as demanding and thorough as the fitness and weight training courses offered. In collecting these signatures, only once did a single individual decline to sign, as she felt that it did not apply to her child attending private school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hedrick. Thank you.
So, Mrs. Hedrick, I'm going to just point out Dr. Jenny Rodriguez. Jenny, if you can raise your hand. This is the contact person that I'm going to put in charge of walking this through the organization. So just so you're aware that that's the contact person. So thank you.
Anybody else?
My name is James Hales, and I also wanted to speak to that same point. I think that it would be a great benefit to the Pasco School District to also create a path whereby a PE waiver could be done. With the state law always supersedes the district law. With the state law allowing it, especially for the clause where it says for participation in directed athletics or for other good cause. And that cause for other good cause has been interpreted by the Kennewick School District and by the Richland School District often for academic reasons. As a person is pursuing classes that will help them prepare for college, especially in AP credit situations, they would prefer to leave the extra space in their schedule to take more AP classes. And I brought this is and I can leave them with you. I could also email it to you if it's more convenient. But this is the procedure at Richland School District. This is also the procedure at Kennewick School District. And it includes the waiver forms and the processes that they've gone through. But there was, just from some experience that I've had, there was some concern in those districts as well that if by providing a waiver process, that would cause more kids to get out of PE, and they were concerned about PE enrollments, and that maybe that would cause the loss of a teacher or something like that. But they actually found the opposite of it, that by doing a waiver, it didn't impact in a negative way. If anything, there was an increase in the Kennewick School District in the number of PE classes were taken when they weren't pressured to do it. In addition, there isn't any loss to the income of the school because they don't allow people to do a PE waiver if they have just open space or to create more time off in their senior year. They need to still have a full load for their senior year. And it allows them to free up those time slots where they can do more AP classes, which would be a benefit to the Pasco School District because we sometimes have classes where we're limited to the number of people that are in those classes. So I'd request that you would seriously consider this. I think it could be a win-win situation. I don't think that there's a level of concern that sometimes pops up.
All right, thank you. And if you could probably give that
Would you
to
like these? And then
Jenny as well.
I'll email them as well if you'd like.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Hales. They're going to go that way anyway. So. I'm going to share this as the petition, and I think this is for the board members. So. Thank you. Anybody else? Well, thank you, Mr. Hales and Mrs. Hedrick, for coming and sharing that with us. I think that sounds like something worth looking into. Appreciate you sharing that. Anybody else? Any other subject? Last call. All right, seeing none, we will close this portion of our meeting.
Mr. Christensen, can I make a comment real
Please
quick?
do.
Yeah, and I know we're not taking action on this, but I'll just say I'm in favor of this, just based on all the information I have at this point. And I think another benefit that wasn't mentioned is, and Mr. Hales kind of alluded to this, that another benefit of this provides more flexibility. And one thing I would love to see is that there just be more options. So instead of a standard students take PE, and I think there already some of this exists. Mr. Walworth can tell us more, and Mr. Satal, maybe he's still here. But, so the kids can decide they can take weights, they can do a row. There's like more, greater variety. When I was in school, it was just you were in PE, and that was it. When I was a junior, we could take weights, and when I was a senior, we took weights. But I think that the opportunity to combine with this more options of physical education classes, because I think that's absolutely essential, and I think we would see greater participation and investment in it if we had, kids able to choose dance and aerobics and yoga, or I don't know, just a greater variety. I'm sure the PE teachers would love that, and the students would certainly love that, and we could just make sure that we make progress on physical activity in our youth with greater flexibility, and I think there's a great opportunity to kind of combine that as well into the waiver.
I know we're not generally supposed to comment on public comments, but it's not just for our highly capable kids that are in AP classes. I have a child who's in special ed and very limited on what she can take because she has to have so many help classes. She is in sports. It would be very easy for her to be able to do sports and then be able to take some electives that she's interested in and make school a little more fun rather than so much work. So I think it could be a win-win for everything. So I might have spoken out of place. I hope not, because we don't always comment on public comments, but I think it's something that we should do sooner rather than later, like tomorrow, but I know that we don't work like that, but we'll see.
Okay. So agenda item number 7, approval of minutes. Can we get a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the regular meeting minutes from October 9th, 2018.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the regular meeting minutes for the October 9th, 2018 meeting. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda. Personnel, warrants, approval of 2018-19 Student Athletics Handbook, approval of Public School Employees of Washington Salary Agreement and Salary Schedules, resolution number 962, District Authorized Agents for the receipt of claims, out-of-state and overnight student travel for Chiawana High School DECA students to attend Western Regional Leadership Conference in Anaheim, California, out-of-state and overnight student travel for Chiawana High School Ski Club to attend ski trip in Rossland, British Columbia. Out-of-state and overnight student travel for Chiawana High School Ski Club to attend a ski trip in Eden, Utah. Overnight student travel for Chiawana High School FCCLA state officers and advisory members to attend the Winter Leadership Meeting in Leavenworth, Washington. Approval for school bus replacement grant through Department of Ecology, and out-of-state and overnight student travel for Pasco High School DECA students to attend Western Regional Leadership Conference in Anaheim, California. So that is the consent agenda. Could we get a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, could we get a roll call, please? Yes.
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 All right, consent agenda is approved. Agenda item number 9, action items. So elementary 16 and 17 naming recommendations, Ms. Robin Hay.
Good evening, Board President Christensen, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. It is my pleasure to return to the board seeking action on the naming of elementary 16 and 17. The purpose of my presentation tonight is to seek your approval of names for our 2 new elementary schools. And this is just their location so that we can tell them apart. Before you are Before you are the 5 names that the committee recommended to be brought forward. They are organized by people of local significance, landmarks that are geographically significant to Pasco, and people of national and world significance. As the board recalls, I was in front of you on October 9th, 2018 with these recommendations. You have been provided with a brief summary of each of the recommendations. Does anybody need me to read them again or any reminders of them? Okay. At this time, I would ask for action from the board to select the names of the new elementary schools being built in Pasco. Here is a suggested motion. One possibility may be to select one of the categories.
Okay, so we have the names. We've had some discussion. I don't know if there's any additional discussion before we make a motion. Any questions? Or I don't think last time we got into the discussion about which would be which. And that's a new little so I don't know that we've thought that far ahead. Was there a recommendation of which name
I
would go with
I
which
don't
school?
think, and I just pulled them back up again so you could see them. I don't think that there is any preference one way or the other that 16 be one of those names in particular or 17 be one of those names. I think that any of those names would work for either of the elementary schools.
Okay. So there we have it. If we,
Well, I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in here because I like all of the names. I would be good with all of them except for one. I have a really hard time with Powerline Road. I went through the whole list. It was significant. I read all of it. I mean, there's like a ton of pages here and every reason why people submitted it. And Powerline Elementary was suggested one time. And I'm just still very concerned about, I lived in Hollister, California and their mascot was the hay balers. And Hollister had nothing to do with hay at the time, and it seemed rather antiquated. There's power lines everywhere. It just doesn't resonate Majesty with me or STEM school or anything else. So I'm not in favor of power line. Columbia River Elementary was put on there 5 different times, and I'd be great with Three Rivers and Columbia River Elementary if we went the geographically significant way, simply because that one was very well represented. There's no Columbia River Elementary in the country that I can see. There is a Columbia in Burbank. There's a Columbia River Gorge Elementary in the Gorge, and I think that would be a great one. But I know, and it was taken straight from these. So that's my only hang up with these, and if we're going to go the geographically significant to Pasco.
so we need a motion.
I had a similar thought as Miss Phillips. I haven't talked to her about it at all, but
I know,
I like Columbia River also.
Yeah, I think in general, and I brought this up at the last meeting, I'm in favor of moving towards geographically significant locations. I don't really like either of these names because I think one of the benefits of having a geographic location is that I may identify where the school is, a nearby park or landmark or non-person name. I think that's a benefit that we don't get from any of those names except for Powerline, but I agree, I don't really like the name Powerline. And I can just see wisdom in going to more geographic name locations. There's some benefit to that. And as we've seen, names can be tricky. They can be divisive. We can, just recently, a former local superintendent, not from Pasco, I'm sure he was admired and beloved by many people, was found out that he did a lot of really inappropriate, awful things with children. So I think that concerns me. I think in the future, and I don't know if we necessarily need a policy modification, but I'd like to see more names, like at least 5 per school. Like this is 5 suggestions for 2 schools, so it's not really much to choose from. And considering there were like 200 submitted, or well over 100. But again, I think our committee did a good job. They did what we directed them to do. But I think in the future, I would love to see us kind of go more towards that. That all being said, I'd be fine with the 2 people of local significance being the names of the 2 schools. I don't know which one, if there's more significance towards one area of the city or not between those, but that's kind of how I'm leaning right now.
So I think the proper way to proceed would be to get a motion and then discuss it. So does anybody have a motion? I know we've had a couple of different suggestions up here, but. So this may not be fair, but Ms. Hay, you're going to be the planning principal. You are the planning principal, will be the principal when the school opens. Do you know anything about either of these gentlemen with respect to either where they lived or which would be appropriate? Not that there's any difference between these schools necessarily, but. And if you don't, just say, I don't. I don't mean to put you on the spot, so.
I know that Mr. McCord lived on Agate Street by 20th Avenue. And I know that, Mr. Fletcher lived on the east side of Pasco. So none of those really bring a significance.
Okay. So maybe we just put the top one as 16 and the lower one is 17, or however you want to do it. Amy, you had a different suggestion if you want to make a motion.
I'm fine with either. We don't have a matching, a national significant to Cesar Chavez, but I think eventually we're going to have an elementary school or something named after him, and I don't think that name is going to go away. I've done a lot of research on him. He did some great things, but like everybody, he was human, and there are some things there too, and so I hope that name comes back, because right now it's the singular. So I'll make a motion for Three Rivers Elementary and Columbia River Elementary School.
So that would be 16 as Three Rivers and 17 as Columbia River.
Sure.
Is that?
I'll
Okay, so it's
second the
been moved.
motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we name elementary 16 Three Rivers Elementary and elementary 17 Columbia River Elementary. Any discussion?
I think the names are too similar.
Okay.
They both have rivers, but Columbia and Three Rivers is they sound very different. And in the Sea of 17, I thought about that. In the Sea of 17, it would be worse if we named one Columbus and Columbia, I think, than Columbia River and Three Rivers.
So,
Kind of gives significance too, that they both came in at the same time. Like the 3 women that all came in, the 3 women scientists that we all put in all at the same time, so.
so I'm going to say this. I think we had a committee that's looked at all of these names. They looked at Columbia River as well as Three Rivers. These were the 5 names that were brought forward by our committee. They spent more time looking at them than I've looked at them. I value their input. As I said last time, I think Cesar Chavez is one that resonates with a lot of people, but we have one national figure. So I am in favor personally of the 2 local figures. I know our history has been that we name most of our schools after people. All of our elementary schools, I believe, are named after people, and these people have local significance. They rose to the top in the committee, so I am in favor of doing that, and I will vote no on the Rivers. I like the Rivers idea. I don't think there's anything wrong with the Columbia River or Three Rivers, but I am in favor of the local people. So I will be voting no, and I would encourage my fellow board members to vote no as well. Any other discussion? Seeing none, could we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Christensen?
No.
Ms. Lincoln?
Yes.
Dr. Ricketson?
No.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Lerman?
Yes.
So it looks like we will be naming our 2 elementary schools. Three Rivers will be elementary number 16, and Columbia River will be elementary 17, or maybe I should say it, elementary 16 will be Three Rivers, and elementary 17 will be Columbia River. Okay,
Thank you for the opportunity to present to you this evening.
thank you. So now we move on to agenda item 10, reports. I'll let you introduce it. Long-term facility.
So it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Reyes, who will be in front of the board tonight presenting what will be the first in many updates around our long-term facilities management plan. Her goal tonight is to just give you an update on where our community builder and our technical working group committees have been, and to provide you a couple of windows into some recommendations they have specific to site size and school size. We are not asking for action on those 2 items tonight, but instead just to let you know that this is where the community builders group is in terms of their thinking at this point. You at some point you'll be approving the plan in its kind of totality, but we wanted to give you kind of updates along the way, and this is the first of those updates.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, President Christensen, members of the board, and Superintendent Whitney. This evening I will be providing you, as Superintendent Whitney shared, an update on the progress of the long-term facilities plan, as well as just a brief overview of enrollment projections and school size and site size recommendations. This is the updated timeline. You notice there's some extra information specific to some of the components listed on the left-hand column, such as financial analysis, and there's also some additional information in some of the timeline sections of the graphic where there's ongoing analysis and future updates will be provided for the board on some of those. We've had a technical working group who has met a few times. They met late spring and over the course of the summer. And the group reviewed a significant amount of data and information about our school district, as well as research and information about school site size and different ways to develop long-term plans and so forth. And at the meeting in August 15th, the group recommended that we reconvene with the Community Builders Group so that we could continue the work and re-engage them in the process and have them assist us in developing recommendations for components of the plan. So the Community Builders Group reconvened, and they have since then met together with the technical work group 3 times. This is just a general overview. I believe you have seen this graphic before. It illustrates the enrollment projections through 2027. The projections are by individual student count, and we are currently working on updating the projections beyond 2027, but also to include the actual October 2018 enrollment. This is the information that both the technical working group and the Community Builders Group has been using to date. So when the new updated projected enrollments are completed, we will be bringing those back to you for review. This is another view of the information by grade levels. It reflects the projections for 3 individual years, 2018, 2021, and 2026. So through this work, the Community Builders Group has discussed a review of the research regarding school size and the impact on students' experiences. They also reviewed data specific to Pasco, including school capacities, as well as surrounding districts' information. So given the data and information that the groups reviewed, both the technical work group as well as the Community Builders Group together, they are recommending for board consideration school sizes for our different levels as listed on this slide. 700 to 800 students at elementary levels, 900 to 1,300 for the middle school level, and 2,000 to 2,600 for the high school level. We also spent time reviewing information regarding selection of school sites and as well as the size of school sites. A number of considerations that districts have to take into account when they're exploring school sites include requirements around health and safety, traffic impacts, and environmental impact. And we also used information from the A4L site, the Association for Learning Environments, and their recommendations, as you can see there. So they recommend elementary schools to be sited on 10 or more acres, middle schools 20 or more acres, and high schools 30 or more acres. We also took a look at Washington Administrative Code 392-342-020. Basically, it provides guidelines for minimum recommended site sizes for schools, and pretty much is self-explanatory there. The recommendation is that the minimum acreage of the site should be first beginning with 5 usable acres and then 1 additional usable acre for each 100 students or portion thereof of the maximum projected enrollment, plus an additional 5 usable acres if a school has grades above grade 6. This table shows current sites in our district for our schools, and it provides you an opportunity to somewhat compare the state minimum recommended site size based on what our 2018 projection was. So the second column there is the projection. It's not what the actual enrollment for this school month of October, the current month. But our site sizes are listed there along with, based on the calculation as outlined in the WAC, what the state minimum recommended site size would be for the schools.
both Angelo and Curie share sites with either the city or another school. Is any of that acreage included in their calculations?
Not on this table. We did share that information with the Community Builders Group at our last meeting, so that they could see what additional space allocation we have access to. But those acreages or those sites are not part of what is counted for us, our actual school site.
Okay.
So this is specific to what's also in the system with OSPI.
Okay, but there is more available
Yes.
space at many of those
Yes,
schools.
for a couple of.
'Cause I was thinking Emerson and McClintock are also in that category, are they not?
You know, I don't have those off the top
Okay,
of my head.
all right.
But there are a few of our schools, yes. Okay. So, based on the information gathered and reviewed, the group came to consensus on these site size range recommendations for your consideration. Elementary schools, the range to be 10 to 15 acres, middle schools, 20 to 40 acres, and high schools, 35 to 70 acres. For you to think about there. Our next steps will be to continue providing you with board updates, as well as the two Community Builders Group and Technical Work Group will continue to meet. Our next meeting is on November 1. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Reyes. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the report for Dr. Reyes?
Yes, thank you. Can you go back to the slide with the projected enrollment, one of your last slides? And I'm wondering if we could get an updated version of this in the future with the actual enrollment, because if you look at like McClintock, for example, I think they had 881 students this year at their enrollment. So I'd like to see it updated with what actually occurred this year. And then if we go back, can you go back a couple slides to the recommended size of school? Yes, that one. So I guess this is what stirs up the most concern, or, essentially this is recognizing what the majority of our schools are kind of at right now. I'm not really sure what we're saying here as far as recommendation for school size. Is that's like the goal, we hope to just maintain this level, this is what we're shooting for, this is the ideal. Like what exactly are we saying by recommendations for size with those numbers?
So as we work to develop a long-range plan, this would be one of the guiding components of that process to determine what our potential future school sizes could be, taking into account the research, but also our own specific Pasco School District context in terms of where we are with regard to number of students who aren't being instructed in brick and mortar schools, and also taking into account the funding and the finances that are required to be able for us to build schools. So there's a lot of pieces at play. This is one of the components that we would use to guide the ultimate development of the long-term plan when it comes to when we plan for an elementary school, for example. What is our typical size? What is the range that we're shooting for? We look at this as a way to guide us in that process to determine cost and the impact too on what we're trying to achieve with regard to addressing overcrowding, for example.
Okay. And now can you go back to the chart? So I'll just say that, my general feel about this is we essentially have all these schools that we already have, and we're trying to plan for the future. So when we say that an elementary school should be 10 to 15 acres, it's not feasible for us to go to, the 10 elementary schools that are less than 10 acres and try to buy the houses around them and make it so there's 10 acres. I don't think that's what we're saying. So I think there's this, we have to recognize that, okay, we're going to plan for the future, and then we can make some modifications as is feasible and practical and cost efficient, but we're not going to be able to, get to have all of our schools be that size. So if we just look at the high school level, so right now Chiawana's 2,800, Pasco's 2,300. So if based on the 2,000 to 2,600 students, essentially if we really try to kind of adhere to that, we're saying, well, we're not going to have another high school for 10 years until we could essentially have at least 2,000 students at each school. And I think we already need a new high school personally. I think we needed it years ago. And so I'm not really in favor of that. And I know we're not going to dissect this all tonight, but I'll just say right now I'm not in favor with that number, that recommendation. And I know this is just these are kind of recommendations and the work of the community builders group. And I know from talking to people that participated that there was lots of disagreement and they're worried about how we would interpret some of these, because I don't think that's necessarily what they're trying to say. I just want to remind fellow board members, this is a tool, it's a guide, it's something we're trying to develop to have more of a plan or an outline, but nothing that committees do, and it we shouldn't view ourselves as just a rubber stamp for everything that committees do. I mean, I guess with the naming, we just showed that. I mean, there was the name that was presented that wasn't even on the recommended naming, but so anyway, so I'm not in favor of that. I'll just say right off the top. And the rest of it, I would like to see us try to have a little bit smaller elementary schools, but that's not practical, right? So we look at what we have and what we're trying to shoot for. I think a general principle would be to, like you mentioned, decrease the number of students in portables, and we just have to, there are a lot of ways to go about that, and no guide or plan is going to really pin that down, but we need to make that type of general principle a goal. So those are just some initial thoughts, but thank you for the work. I know that a lot of community members have attended a lot of meetings and worked through some of these questions.
I appreciate all your work here too. It's obvious that you didn't just take into account what the ideal size of school is, that you also took into account the desperate need that we have for schools. So these are going to be guidelines for the schools in the near future. Can we put like an asterisk by those guidelines, you know, with the astronomical growth or whatever you want to put? You know, these are the current guidelines that I just don't want them to be seen as permanent guidelines. I've done a little bit of studying, and I think elementary schools, 500 kids-ish, are ideal. Middle schools, I think it's 900 to 1,100 kids are ideal. High schools, the biggest high school in the state of Washington outside of Pasco, I believe, is 2,300 students. I hate building schools for so much bigger than all of those high schools. I think it starts to limit. And I think I did a little bit of studying, and that one was 1,800. Anyway, all of these I've studied a long time ago. But obviously, all of our numbers are bigger than the ideal because of the need and the lack of funding, because we don't have a big industrial base here in Pasco. So I appreciate your work. I understand the constraints. I do want to make sure we have that asterisk there, because they are going to be guiding principles for the near future. But I'm hoping we can get someday to more ideal school sizes, as if growth ever slows down. It's got to slow down sometime, doesn't it? Anyway, so I think that's my only thing that I'd like to make sure is in there.
And typically, a long-term plan, such as the one we're attempting to develop, it is just that. It's a guideline, it's a plan, and we can incorporate 3-year reviews where we are absolutely, just like a school improvement plan, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're adjusting it accordingly, to ensure that we're continually attempting to address the needs as our context changes, if it does. And if we are able to eventually have schools that are that ideal size. So yes, it's definitely not, it's a guideline, it's a way for us to get started to actually develop kind of a vision for what we would want our facilities to be for our district.
Thank you.
I sent a request to Mr. Christensen and Ms. Whitney and the leadership, Ms. Phillips. They can decide if and when we talk about this. But we had a Friday update from you that said that with the suspension in the grades 4 through 12, class size reduction, the kind of permanent suspension of that, you were going to use the contract language to determine grades 4 through 12 number of students per classroom. And then we have the grades K through 3 that we as a board defined earlier. You also have your class usage percentage numbers, and then we have a definition of brick and mortar. I'd like to see all of that put together so that we can see, or at least me, so that the board can see where we are with those new classroom numbers. Hopefully they fit within what you have here at most schools, but for those that don't, I think it guides boundary, but it also guides long-term planning, and maybe the community builders would like to see that. So school A may show that, you know, even with the class usage that we have and everything, it's 60% over capacity, and school B is, you know, 5% over, but I think it would give us another benchmark to determine where we are, so that we as a board, we know we're going to be set a plan from the community builders, but we can see where the overcapacity is at through those new numbers that we have.
Yes, we're actively working on updating that information.
Thank you.
And I shared with the community builders group that we would be providing that as well.
So thank you, Dr. Reyes. I think these numbers look totally in line with what I would expect on these school sizes and the site size. Certainly, they're bigger than we would hope they would be, but given the situation that we're in, and I think these numbers were put together to help give some direction to our long-range facilities plan that we're currently developing, and I think given where we are currently, these numbers make perfect sense. 700-800 student elementary schools going forward, at least in the next 10-year horizon and 20-year horizon is probably where we're going to be. Certainly, we will adjust these. They've been adjusted up. Hopefully, we don't have to adjust them up again, but they've gone up certainly from what it was 20 years ago. The middle schools, that's huge. We used to think 1,300 was big, but now 1,300's where we're at. The high schools, I mean, if we built another high school, even at 26,000 or 2,600 students, by the time we opened another high school, all of our high schools would be over that again. So I think if we build one smaller than that, we would be sorely mistaken. So, and then the site size, I think the site size, certainly we're not going to go back and expand the sizes of the sites that we have now in our elementary schools, but I think going forward, we need to, and this is about where we are on the sizes or the sites that we are building on currently. So we're in the 10 to 15 acre site. Our middle school falls in the 20 to 40. I do think we need to be conscientious when we're purchasing land, that we don't purchase more than we need and tie up that money in land. I mean, certainly it would be nice to have it, but these give us some guidelines in going forward. So I think this is work that will be helpful to us and to the committee in moving forward. So thank you for your work there.
You're welcome.
What's the timeline so we'll have for us to have a final plan that we'll review and that we can modify or discuss? This was kind of just a draft, a real prequel, right?
So the timeline that Dr. Reyes outlined shows final approval in February, but again, you'll be seeing chunks of the long-term facilities management plan coming before the board, but final approval is scheduled to be done in February. We like to get these kinds of things out in front of you multiple times, however, before we ask for your approval. So, December, January timeframe. And if something happens that we feel like we need to slide the timeline, we would give you a rationale for that. I mean, part of this is this work has taken a long time. We've had a couple of different stops and starts for a variety of different reasons outside of our control. We want to be thoughtful about getting the work done, but if we get impeded in some way that we think it's going to undermine the quality of the plan, we would certainly come to you and ask for an extension, but our goal is to have it done by February, because we recognize this has been going on for a while, so.
I did notice our enrollment projection for 2018 was over 100 students more than the actual enrollment. So even though we grew by a few hundred students, it was less than the projected. So I don't know. That seems good to me to help this school situation.
Can you go back to the slide on the size recommendation? I had a question about the middle school. So was that planning for the size? Yeah, right there. So the middle schools, was this talking about if there are 3 grades at middle school or if there are 2 grades or?
3 grades, 6, 7,
3
8.
grades. Okay. Okay, good. So that's, okay.
And you were talking about the high school. If you looked at the numbers that were in the high school, there's 1,100 more than the 2,000 now. So even if you build a new high school now, there's already 1,100 over that now in the two high schools, so
Yeah,
2,000.
we have like 1,700 in each high school, which is, by
Yeah,
the time we
so
build the high school, we'll be
Yeah.
probably close
Below
to
the
2,000 mark for each high school.
Probably 18 or 1900. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Right, we would be under the 2000 probably if at least in the timeline in my head that I would hope for our community, because I already see a lot of issues that it's a problem. They're too big already. So in my timeline in my head, we would be under that. But again, we will just see.
But when we built Giovanna, we thought it was a humongous high school. I mean,
It
we thought
is.
it was huge. I mean, you know, in
And
space-wise,
it's in a 2,200 square, it's only
I-
for 2,200 kids.
I know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
insane.
I guess I just don't want us to think that when you look at the recommendations, it's like, oh, we're pretty much on track. And I don't think we're on track. I mean, I think we need to be way more aggressive than we've been in the last 15 years. And to me, the numbers just kind of recognize where we're at. And I think that type of, if we have that mindset, we're going to continue to struggle with overcrowding. And I think we need to make progress on overcrowding. And for that reason, I'll just say right now, I would recommend modifying that when we get the final report, because it's too much. It's not recognizing that this is not an ideal situation, and we need to be way more aggressive in our facilities planning, because that's what's gotten us here, is not an aggressive enough facilities approach in the last 15 years.
So the other component to this will be the bond capacity, and so are we going to get a report on bond capacity? I mean, you guys are looking at that soon, I would expect. You're going to start?
That is actually the topic of our November 1 meeting.
Okay. So, yeah,
And Mm-hmm.
that's,
If you look at if you could go to the last slide, I believe it's the December meeting, that is the update for the board. Yeah. So on December 11th, the long-term facilities plan update will include the prioritized facilities needs as the community builders group and the technical working group sees it at that time. And then that will also be the point in which you would get an update in the fiscal analysis. So you'll get that in December.
And even though it might not seem proactive enough, our numbers, even with these current numbers and what we have currently have space in our current buildings for, we are desperately in need of another middle school, and we haven't even got this one built yet, and a high school. And I don't know what that's gonna come up with, but the fact that we're already that far behind, even with these big numbers, speaks to what we're faced with right now in Pasco.
okay. Any other board comments?
Before Dr. Reyes steps away from the podium, I also want to acknowledge her efforts in this long-term facilities management plan is a pretty Herculean lift. And she has come in and assumed a plan that was kind of partially started. And so when you're new to an organization and new to a process, assuming work that was kind of partially done makes a hard lift even harder. So I want to acknowledge that and thank Susanna for her work. And also, in the middle of all of this, engaging a community group in a reboundary process. So thank you for your hard work and efforts, and we recognize that these are two really heavy lifts that Susanna is taking on behalf of our community and our district, so thank you.
Thank you. We do have incredible staff who are supporting, as well as really a great community builders group who's taking their time to come in and work with me on it. So I appreciate that.
Good, thank you. All right. So we'll go to agenda item
So you
10B.
You need to see if anybody from the community.
Anybody from the community want to comment to the board on our long-term facilities plan or any of those numbers? Seeing none. Report on Employee Services Department audit update.
So I just wanted to remind the board, this audit is a part of the current district annual objectives. And so this report will give you kind of a status update in terms of where we are on those commitments that we made a year ago to bring some of these things full circle. This is also Ms. Kelly York's first opportunity to present to the board. She's joined our team as the Director of Employee Services, and we actually put a little bit of a push pin in this audit last spring in order to allow Kelly to get on board, get her feet under her, and really review the document. Kelly is new, getting onboarded, getting familiar with the document, understanding the organization and the departmental needs. So Sarah is co-presenting with Kelly because Sarah has more of kind of the historical context that got us to this place, and so she'll provide some of that information as well as kind of a data picture for the audit review. So they're your team tonight, and again, this is an update and a status report as applies to one of your district annual objectives around attracting, retaining, and recruiting and hiring high-quality staff. There'll be a second follow-up presentation that Susan Sparks will do at our next meeting that is specific to our professional pipeline and some of our mentoring programs. So this is actually the first in a series. So welcome, Kelly, and good evening, Assistant Superintendent Thornton.
And good evening, Board President Christensen, Superintendent Whitney, and board members. Excuse me. As Mrs. Whitney said, this is a co-presentation tonight, and I'm going to start by talking about some key results from our survey from Hanover Research and areas of improvement that the survey identified. And then Kelly's going to be moving into talking with you about department goals for the year and key initiatives moving forward. All right. So in the 2017-2018 school year, the district did contract with Hanover Research to review the department in a couple different ways. And the information that we're presenting to you tonight comes from the survey that they conducted last winter regarding the Employee Services Department. And that is a survey that they administered to district staff and administrators to assess the level of satisfaction with services and programs offered by the department, as well as an assessment of people's overall experience with the department. The survey did identify areas of strengths and areas of improvement in how we deliver service to PSD staff, and we'll be utilizing those results in setting goals and working on initiatives moving forward. The other piece of the work that Hanover Research is continuing to do with us is work with Dr. Reyes and Susan Sparks in regard to a recruitment and retention review, and so that is targeted to be done around January of 2019, and they'll be able to address that with you when they present to you later on this year. So one of the key areas that Hanover looked at for us that they measured was the way in which staff utilize services offered in employee services, and they broke the services in the department down into broad categories: benefits, compensation and pay, hiring/onboarding, retirement planning, substitute services, and personnel policies. And what they found is that the vast majority of staff primarily contacted employee services for assistance with questions related to benefits and questions related to compensation and pay. That was not necessarily a result that surprised anyone. That's those are some of the key interests of staff. Importantly, Hanover measured for us satisfaction with services provided in the department, and generally the results were very positive. We were especially pleased to see that generally staff in the district were satisfied with the customer service being delivered in the Employee Services Department. This was an area that had been identified previously in a survey that we administered in 2012 and had been a key focus for Mrs. Hay during her leadership tenure in the department. I know they did a lot of work around that to improve customer service and improve the atmosphere in the department for people accessing those services. And so we were pleased to see that pay off as far as survey results and coming back in the feedback about customer service. The survey did go further to request suggestions for ways that we can improve, and did identify some of those improvements. Broadly, communication and clarity in communication was identified as an area in which the department could improve and be more proactive. So this is another way to look at the information that came back from Hanover, measuring employee satisfaction with the services and supports provided by the department. And as you can see, all of the areas measured scored generally between 65 and 70% positive. So on the one hand, that's good that there's an overall positive impression with the services that we provide. Looking at it a little bit differently and kind of in the context of our 100% goals as a district, while we're pleased that those measures are in the positive, there's also some room for improvement and ways that we can continue to grow and make sure that we are providing the services that staff need in a way that's most beneficial to them. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly, and she can describe with you a little bit more in detail what some of those goals will be for next year.
So again, going into a little bit more detail on some of the recommendations that came out of the Hanover research, 3 things that they highlighted that we could do better as a department was to document our processes and procedures and our personnel policies and make those more readily available to our employees. Another item they mentioned was that when we have new hire orientations, the information instructions regarding those orientations and what is going to be the topics and the expectations for the new hires should be communicated in a timely manner. Sometimes there wasn't a lot of lead time for the employees to come in and be oriented and fill out paperwork or bring the proper documents with them when they came to that orientation. The third item they suggested is that we do a better job with when we make major policy changes or issues change in the district, communicating that to our employees so that they know that a process or procedure has been changed. So the Employee Services Department as a whole used this information to set goals for the 2018-2019 school year. And included in our goals are a focus on our departmental procedures and structures. Specifically, the department is developing more efficient processes for hiring and allocating resources. Staff roles and responsibilities are also being realigned to provide consistent customer service and support. To improve the substitute teaching pool, adjustments to the application process have also been implemented this school year. Such improvements have included streamlining the process of recruiting, interviewing, and processing substitute teacher applications. In the process of recruiting substitute teachers, we often attract high-quality teachers, and we then end up with a pool of potential applicants for our full-time teaching positions. Once we develop that relationship, a lot of times that's where we hire our teachers from. So due to that cycle, there's continuous recruitment is needed because as we hire substitutes to become full-time teachers, we now have depleted our substitute teacher pool. So this is just one example of how we're operationalizing our department initiatives, and we're going to be using this as one of our recruitment tools. It's been very helpful. We've done a lot of work this year already with substitute interns. Those are student teachers who can be cleared by the state. If the university and the school agrees, they can actually substitute for their master teacher while the master teacher is absent. So just some of those different ideas of creating relationships with those substitute and potential teachers down the road, as well as people that just want to be substitute teachers. That's one process that we've already streamlined. We've gone through 3 interview cohorts. We're bringing substitutes in as a group and doing orientation with them, cross-training also the Employee Services Department staff so that when new hires or other applicants come into the office, more than one person can help them and answer their questions. With that, I'm going to segue back to Sarah. Thank you.
So in addition to the specific goals for 18-19 that Kelly identified, the department has also identified broader initiatives to focus on over time, and those those include recruiting, retention, staffing, the new teacher mentor program, and professional development. These are topics that Susan Sparks is going to be going over with you in a presentation in November. So at this time, we will go ahead and say thank you, and ask if you have any questions or if there's any additional information we can provide.
Thank you, Ms. Thornton and Ms. York. Is any questions from the board?
Thank you. You did a great job with your first presentation.
Thank you.
I love this kind of data. I think it's so important that we stay very much in touch with the people who teach our kids every day and who do the work that's so important to helping them, helping these individuals do their very best. I remember Mark came out with this time thing where technology requests were coming in, and they timed them to make sure that they were getting back in a timely manner. Do we still do that? Was that you? Okay. My mind doesn't always work as well as it used to, so. So do we still do something like that to help those things get solved quickly, the concerns, the technology concerns and such?
On the technology side, yeah.
Okay. And did this test all things like requests everywhere with technology and everything? Not test, survey?
So this survey was specific to employee services.
Okay.
And and not services provided by Mark's department, but
Okay.
This was specific to the items listed in the presentation around pay and benefits, and those items that are handled by the employee services department.
Okay.
So, and those are a little bit more difficult to quantify, I think, in the same way that Mark's department can quantify a help desk ticket, for example, in the way that those come in. So the survey responses were more general in that regard.
Okay, so this is just employee services. I thought, another thing that I noticed that was interesting was that they wanted us to clarify, communicate, be concise with more communication. Good luck with that.
Thank you for the presentation. Could you go back to the slide about the substitute teacher recommendations? My question is, I'm curious, yeah, perfect. If some of those same recommendations were made regarding just new teacher applications. I've heard similar concerns in the past about new hires, some of those exact things. And so is that something that was found, or something that we're trying to put into place where we would make those same improvements to our new teacher hires?
Yes, I mean, through this process, obviously, we started looking at the application process as a whole. We sort of focused on the substitute application first, but as we were updating this, we did review the entire application process. We took out duplications, things where maybe the same question was asked more than once in the same application. We're also looking at maybe some delineation between different types of positions. Not asking questions that don't apply to certain positions, so they're not having to click through those screens. There's also been some frustration with applicants that are applying for jobs maybe that they don't hold the qualification for. They've tried to push through, and I had a phone call today. I'll use a real life example. An applicant was trying to apply for a position for which a master's degree was required. She got to the point where she needed to enter her master's degree information, and it wouldn't let her go any further. So I explained to her, let's pull up the job description and read the posting. Unfortunately, that job does require a master's degree. So the system is set up not to allow you to go further because you don't meet the minimum qualifications. So those are the kind of things that we're looking at, just making the online application also more user-friendly, so people will be able to read those instructions prior to going halfway through the application before they realize they're not qualified for the position.
That's great. That's great. Sounds like good changes. I know the requirements for letters of recommendation, transcripts, I've heard a lot of people say that was a holdup, and they seem to or the amount of time it took us to get back to potential teacher, new hires, just was really, took a long time, much longer than other districts where they had applied, and sometimes they'd already accepted another job. So I'm curious, that may be something that is trackable or that we could somehow track. I don't know, maybe it's harder than I'm thinking, but I know that that's an area that I think we may be able to get more teachers based on what I've heard from multiple people that either have and have not accepted positions in our school district.
Okay, any other comments from the board? All right, thank you, Ms. York and Ms. Thornton.
Thank you.
Anybody from the audience want to say anything on these subjects? Seeing none. So that concludes our reports and extended study. Oh, no, we don't have anything under extended. That concludes reports. We don't have anything under extended study or discussion tonight, so number 12, future agenda items.
So I'd like to offer a correction to what's in your board packet. It shows there that the student board reps will be doing their WASDA report. Well, that's meeting is actually in advance of WASDA, so that would be impossible. So they'll be doing their report on the 27th, or actually in December. So what will happen on the 13th is there will be a study session that will give you an update in terms of where we are with the current boundary process. So Susanna will be in front of the board talking to you about where we're at, some potential recommendations in terms of scenarios for boundaries. So that will be on November 13th in the study session. We'll also have Susan Sparks will be presenting on the professional pipeline and mentoring. So that's kind of the second part of the report that you heard tonight. And then Sarah will be in front of you with the first reading of a facilities use policy. It's also our opportunity to recognize our school psychologists as part of our special recognition series that we do every year. And then I just also wanted to call the board's attention. You as a board had made the decision a year or so ago, maybe two, that the board meeting immediately following the WASDA annual conference would be utilized as a retreat for you as a board to process through the learning from WASDA and then make plans for what you wanted your direction to staff to be based on new learning. So that will happen on the 27th. I'll work with board officers between now and then to identify what time we're going to start and how long that will go. But it'll be a retreat. So the regularly scheduled board meeting is canceled. And in its place, there will be a board retreat focused on processing through your new learning from the WASDA annual conference. So that is the next couple board meetings. We are requesting an executive session tonight, instead of for two purposes, only just to focus on one, which is under RCW 4231.10.1G for personnel, and it's this one of your quarterly updates on the superintendent evaluation. I'm expecting it to take probably about 60 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so board members, anything anybody has that they want to add to any future agenda? Any particular items of discussion? All right. Agenda item 13, communications. Mr. Larriman, do you want to start for us?
I'd like to point out that on November 8th at 10 a.m., it's hard for a lot of people that are working, but there's a dedication ceremony at the Early Learning Center, and I think it's a community celebration event. It's a board celebration event, district celebration event. But about 5 years ago, the board sat down and said that, we were talking about long-term planning and goals and said, this is really important. We could kind of see the writing on the wall that people that were starting to talk about early learning and not starting, but there was getting to be a lot more discussion on early learning and the importance of it, not just buildings, but programs also. And we said, well, we would like to have a building, and the district helped facilitate work with us, and some of us went to Olympia multiple times and heard no on getting funding, and some of the community was really supportive on funding this, but there was a lot of community that wasn't supportive on funding this. And I think the majority of the community now sees it, and I would say that over time, over 5 years, just statewide and locally, there really has gotten to be a lot more effort behind providing more early learning opportunities, more early learning facilities. But I just wanted to say we're going to have that celebration. Thank you to all the district staff and board members that had that vision and got some seed money from the legislature, and also to our local taxpayers who helped with that. And you can come see the Early Learning Center and the great things that are happening there.
I look forward to that dedication, because that's really, it's been a long time coming, and a lot of work has gone into it, so I look forward to that. Thank you.
Along those early learning lines, one of the successes that we adopted last year is the Ready for Kindergarten program, and I attended the fall session last Saturday. The session I attended was great. It was packed. I think there were 12 or 13 parents. Both parents were there, and just had a great session. For those that aren't aware, that I think there's a couple more fall sessions still, and then there'll be another round of different classes in February-ish for the winter classes. And so the great thing about that, it's available to every single family in Pasco. All you have to do is, and they even have babysitting there, which I actually utilize for 2 of my younger children. And so find a time, get with a friend, trade babysitting, utilize the Boys and Girls Club babysitting, but you will not regret going to the Ready for Kindergarten trainings. It's inspired me to be a better dad, and now I'm trying to apply the things that I learned there.
So for this week for Chihuahua, and there's the gravel pit game at the end of the week that on Friday at Edgar Brown that's happening, and it's against Pasco, and so that's an event that's coming up. And it's also our Pink Week this week, so we are doing things in support of breast cancer research, and just students are donating money. It's been a good time.
So this week is our Delta Spirit Week, and yesterday it was Sports Day, so everyone came in, their sweats and all their sports gears, and it was pretty fun. And it's really weird to see everyone in that, because we're supposed to be in professional dress most of the day, so it was a day for everyone to let go. It was pretty cool. Today it was Tacky Tourist Day, and let me tell you, it was an interesting thing to walk into school in the morning. There was this one guy who took it all the way and brought his suitcase to school and just carried all his school supplies in there. It was pretty cool. And tomorrow is, obviously on Wednesdays we wear pink. So, everyone's going all out with all their pink outfits, and it should be a great day.
I'll pass.
So just to let my fellow board members know, we did submit an application for Board of Distinction this year, and we did get word back that we were selected, or whatever the right word is. We are a Board of Distinction again this year, so at the WASDA Annual Conference, we will get our picture taken and be recognized. So. Thank you. And so just to be aware of that, hopefully you're planning to attend the annual conference, and after, as Michelle said, after the annual conference, we will be having our debrief and retreat, talking about some of the things that we learned there that we can implement to be a better board. So.
I wanted to thank our student board representatives. We hosted our first Superintendent Student Advisory Council on Wednesday of last week, and we spent that meeting onboarding some of our new members and also engaging with the members of the council around the things that they would really like to talk about over the course of the next year. And as always, which has been true for the last 2.5 years that I've done this with students, the things that they want to talk about are game changers. They have big ideas, they have big insight, and they want to engage around really meaningful discussions. So the student board representatives and I will plan for our December meeting, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our students about to help provide some voice to you and direction to the district. So they continue to inspire me. Our kids are absolutely incredible, and You know, I say this every time I talk about them. They really do make me a better superintendent and really just a better human being getting to spend time with our kids. They're really impressive. And it's 30 kids that are representative of the high school student body, and I feel extraordinarily grateful to get to spend time with them. So it is, I'm not going to lie, it is my favorite meeting that I get to go to. So I'm sorry to everyone else, but it is my favorite meeting. October 30th is our first VIP day of the month. This one is going to be hosted at Markham. So we're going to go out to Markham Elementary for that. It'll be in the morning. So if board members are interested in attending, let me know. I'll make sure Jenny's aware. And then community that'd like to attend, email me directly at mwhitney@psd1.org, and I'll make sure you're on the list. I also made a commitment to one of our newest team members, Mr. Steve Story, that I would acknowledge that this week is School Bus Safety Week. So our school bus drivers, mechanics, driver trainers, transportation supervisors do an extraordinary job transporting tens of thousands of kids. I asked one during our one big winter, well, how many kids ride the bus, And they were like 10,000 kids ride the bus every day. So they take care of our 10,000 student riders every day of the year. So while we're recognizing this week as Student Safety or School Bus Safety Week, we acknowledge that our staff is extraordinary every day of the year. So feel grateful to work with them and that they work hard every day to keep our students safe. And it might also be a good time, while I know that this wasn't Governor Jay Inslee's intent, to remind all of us that when you see a bus with its stop signs out and lights on, it is a law that you stop and wait. It is illegal to pass a bus. So be safe out there. Big yellow school buses, they have kids on them. Make sure that you observe that safety around them as well.
And I might just remind you that elections are coming up, so vote. You should have your ballot, and this is your chance to participate. So thank you for sticking around. Looks like we even had a couple of principals come back and join us, so thank you for your extra dedication. We will recess now into executive session.